I am Bob Fuchs with the Firehouse Wine Cellars in Rapid City, South Dakota. I spent many hours this month doing a study on which of the states allow bulk wine to be shipped into their state. My findings are that 5 states allow bulk wine shipments with the requirement of some sort of blending. The state of New Hampshire does not allow bulk wine shipments. All other states allow bulk wine to be shipped into their state. Most of the winery owners from other states that I interviewed were confused as to why a state would even broach this subject, since the industry is based on this method of process and shipping. Not to mention, the federal government fully allows the process and tracks it. Of the 8,700 wineries in the U.S., 8,676 wineries are already allowed this proposed legislation. We're not asking for anything special. We just want to have the same rules as 99% of all other wineries in the U.S. Firehouse Wine Cellars does not compete with the wineries of South Dakota, who are typically making wine from fruit and vegetables. Our business model is quite different in that our wines are grape-based. Our competitors are the grape winemakers of the United States. Thereby, we need the same rules as the wineries have in order to compete in the grape wine market. 7% of the wine sold in South Dakota is made in South Dakota. 93% comes from out-of-state wineries. We have all heard of Barefoot Wines. Did you know that the Barefoot Winery does not own any vineyards? All of their wines are sold in South Dakota, are made from bulk wine. So when we hear protectionistic testimony that bulk wine should not be brought into South Dakota, it is already here in abundance, and these out-of-state wineries are enjoying the majority of South Dakota sales, while we have current legislation to stifle our hometown wineries. 28 years ago, when we were the first brewery in South Dakota since Prohibition, one of our partners was John Hickenlooper, the current governor of Colorado. John had the first brewery in downtown Denver. Several years after we began brewing beer, I ran into John and mentioned how terrible it must be to have all these new breweries in the Denver area. He said that it was great. Every time a new brewery opened, his sales would go up. In the last few years in Rapid City, we have had several new breweries open, and sure enough, our sales increased with every new brewery open. South Dakota grew a new industry. Thank you to the Department of Revenue for taking on the task of this legislation and their diligence of spending nearly a year studying this issue and coming forward with proposed legislation that works for South Dakota. We are not asking for preferential treatment with this legislation, just to be allowed to compete the same way as the other 99.7% of the wineries in the United States, and thereby grow the wine industry in South Dakota just like we have done in the beer industry. Thank you for your time and consideration.